So very good. We do have a quorum, and we are, this is our open voting meeting for May 10th, and we are in open session. I entertain motions to go into executive session.
I move we enter into executive session for the purpose of discussing proposed, pending, or current litigation, collective negotiations, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation.
Second.
Second by Chris. Tricia, do we have to do the roll call or?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, please call the roll when you're ready.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Aaron Croy, Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Nicole Lefebvre,
Yes.
Maura Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Patricia Wasserman.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. We will be back, hopefully probably right on time, which means.
Tricia, I apologize for.
Oh no, you're all worked up about the IRS.
Yes.
We just want the public to know, we do not create tax law, right? We don't, we can't do that.
And we don't talk about Bruno.
But we can complain about it. But we are back, and Sean, I believe you have a modification to the agenda.
I do have modifications to the agenda. I would like to add to today's agenda for item 10.3, changes to open meeting law, a conversation about the changes to open meeting law. So I big number.
Without objection, this item was on our agenda last time. We did indeed run a little long, and we ran a little long earlier today. Dr. Brown, it was accommodations. And once again, it was the largest number of accommodations. It was, how many were there?
Close to 600, yes.
Outside in the quad. We were kind of standing in the shade, and the crowd was in the sun. And I did not set that up. Vaughn, there had to be a microphone somewhere, but it was great to once again do that. We will do another accommodation ceremony in June, just to try to finish up the year. But nice job, Dr. Brown. You read all those names in the heat. You were in the sun doing that, so I appreciate it. But we will get started with public comment period as we do.
We have 3 people who have signed up this evening. Up first is Dr. Pei Soinka Arwele.
Good evening. Thank you so much. I'll try to make this very quick with my 3 minutes. In January this year, I sent a detailed letter of complaints and request for accountability to all the board members regarding the unprofessional behavior and actions of the board president, Mr. Ainsley, last year, when I was asked by a parent in the community to help her serve a copy of her petition to Mr. Ainsley and other board administrators, members, as she was required to do by the New York State Education Department. In carrying out this responsibility, we, both I and a member of the community, were met by an angry and a very hostile outburst from the board president, Mr. Ainsley. It was severe enough that I became worried about my safety, and we recorded this incident on video. The Board of Education members commit to uphold equity, fairness, and to build a safe and affirming environment, and to lead by example in a respectful, professional, and courteous manner. I had trusted that the board would uphold this code and that the legal service of process could be done in a courteous and professional manner. Instead, I personally found it to be a harrowing, very tense and dispiriting exercise, as Mr. Ainsley's exhibition of anger and delay tactics threatening to obstruct due process and deny the petitioning parent the possibility of transmitting her petition to the New York State Education Department. Mr. Ainsley, you refused to identify yourself when you were asked. You lied outrightly, denying that you are the person, the respondent. You then asked that we leave your property at once. And when we put the papers of service down at your feet, you picked up the package and flung it into the snow, where it was sure to disintegrate and become unreadable. We rescued the papers from the snow, and then I attempted to speak with you courteously again. Despite knowing me for many years and sitting with me in a discussion a few weeks prior to that incident, you denied knowing who we were. This behavior really killed my hope that the school board, which I previously held in high esteem, all of you, would uphold the course of justice in an impartial manner or provide a respectful and fair treatment to all members of the community. I was personally disturbed as a Black woman. I felt very vulnerable, and I felt the dangers of conducting business with the school board because of your personal allegiances. How difficult would it be for another member of the community to file a petition if they have to run the gauntlet of such hostile and obstructionist actions by the leaders of our most powerful educational leadership board? When I wrote to the board in January this year to review the incident, I asked you for an acknowledgement that such behavior was unethical and unprofessional. I asked for an apology for the treatment we were forced to endure in carrying out a legitimate, very simple formal process required and related to district and school board matters. I asked that Mr. Ainsley would hold himself accountable for his actions and that he responds in a manner that upholds the integrity of that office. I asked that the school board members receive training on how to accept service of process in a professional manner and be willing to provide support and guidance. And I asked for a clear-cut description of what we can expect in terms of grievances, petitions, and processes. I didn't get any response at all from any school board member. I was ignored, and I feel that that in itself is disrespectful and breaks down the spirit of trust in our community. I feel this is a violation of public trust. It should not be acceptable for the school board to treat parents and members of this community in that manner. At the very least, you should have responded when I emailed, even if you felt you could not comment on the incident. I should have been deserving of a response. And this is what I'm asking. Why didn't I get a response? And will the school board hold its members accountable for their behavior? Thank you very much for the work you do, and thank you for listening to my comments today.
Up next is Liz Quadrosi.
Sorry, there's a lot of buttons. Okay, hi, Liz Quadrosi, 6th grade science teacher at Dewitt Middle School. Nice to see everybody. Want to give a shout out to the student reps for the work that they're doing. It's extraordinary, and the time they're putting in. I wanted to come tonight to talk about some of the language that I heard at the last board meeting, because it was a little bit troubling. Board of Education members, whether they believe it or not, are in a position of power in our community, and stereotyping an entire gender based on, stereotyping an entire group of people based on their gender or race or sexuality or religion is just wrong, no matter what. Comments like, it's really hard to talk to middle-class white women about the power of dance. Have a problem with teachers who have a white superiority complex, who just can't do it anymore. Even when we refer to former administrators as a regime, which carries some powerful connotation, especially in today's world, makes it really difficult to see how we can all come to the table with that kind of rhetoric being thrown at us. And as the previous commenter mentioned, it's an issue of trust. Can we trust this to be an honest conversation? I also want to point out that all over the place. People seem to be surprised that people leave ICSD. They don't want to work here. 6% of our positions are open, probably more at this point. These sessions are videotaped. Anybody can watch them. I know that I'm pretty disheartened at being called a racist time and time again in board meetings. And I just felt like it was time to say something. We are people. We have undergone the most difficult 3 years in our career, and we're still here. We haven't left. We're trying to make it better. Language is important. Dr. Brown reminds us of that all the time. I remind my students of that all the time. Our community deserves better from the people who run our school district. Thank you.
And up next is Steve Manley.
Evening, everybody. This is Steve. There must have been a mix-up. I'm not on the, not planning for public comment tonight.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, everybody.
Are there any other comments from the public? If not, board responses. To public comment.
I just have two quick responses. On one to Peggy, I was under the impression that we did acknowledge her letter. I apologize for that. And we strive to do better, so I apologize for not responding. I also, just hearing, I was not at the last board meeting, and I honestly did not review the board meeting, so I don't want to speak to what was shared or what she was referring to, because I don't have prior knowledge. I wouldn't want to do it any disservice. I will take a piece of what she said, and I truly understand, because it's difficult, and I think everyone needs to take a step back and truly think about how we approach and acknowledge one another as people and how we engage one another. I know as a board member, some of the tone, the language, the outright disrespect that has come my way is concerning at times, and even made me nervous with some things that's been shared with me. And I would ask that we all consider that. We have an opportunity here, and I think just coming off of what she said, words have mattered. And I've always said, I believe we're a truly collaborative school district, and what that looks like moving forward is extremely important, especially coming out of COVID. This is our time to really come together as a district and be better.
Go ahead.
I just want to echo what Chris said. I too was under the impression that we had given a response to the communication we received, and I agree with Chris too that this is a good opportunity for us to all reflect on how we use language, how we speak to others.
Sean, go ahead.
I should address Dr. Patey's comments, in particular about the request for a response. Dr. Patey, as you're hearing, the board spent considerable time discussing the communication. There was a response that was drafted. I will take responsibility for it not being sent, and we will make sure that the response that we drafted on March 2nd of 2022 you receive promptly. It does not address the fact that you had to wait. That part I understand. But again, there was considerable conversation and all board members signed on to the draft. And I presume that all board members believe that the response had been sent. So feel free to contact me at any point in time. Go ahead, Andrew.
I would just like to say also to Dr. Pate, I mean, I'm not familiar with the circumstances of this specific incident, but you're talking about a petition. And so one thing that that we are kind of taught using our little model democracy at LACS, we have a certain process where a student can make a petition to discuss something immediately, discuss it urgently in an emergency. And we recognize the kind of the crucial importance of how a petition is, at our school, it's a school of 300 students, maybe, if that. So students have a lot more say in a much larger community. Like even if Ithaca is not like a huge place by any measure, but it's a large community relative to that, and so a petition is really one of the only ways, one of the most effective ways that a person can build momentum behind their movement. And so I would like to say on behalf of myself, on behalf of all the students from LACS, we recognize how important petitions are, and I feel sorry for the fact that your petition was treated that way. That's all.
Well, it's very, very interesting. There are two sides to all interactions. So petitions are presented to the board clerk. This is, and we get all our, if you in the community, if you want to write us a letter, if you want to petition us, it just goes through the board clerk. This was a very upsetting morning for my home and my family. That Saturday in January, in the middle of COVID, I awoke to a pounding on my front door. And apparently that was, as I found out later, the second time someone had approached our door, pounding on my front door, disturbed the household. And I went down to, we had not started our day. I went down to see who was at my door. I didn't know whether there was an emergency at one of the neighbors. This is during COVID. Our friends we did not go to each other's houses. So who in the world is at my door on Saturday morning? And so I went to the door and I opened it up, and there was a person in a mask and stated, "Are you Robert Ainsley?" And so before I respond, I need to know who I'm speaking to. And I said, "Who are you?" And she said, "Are you Robert Ainsley? I'm going through this with you all." And I said, "Who are you?" And "You came to my door. You need to identify yourself." And so we were going back and forth like that for a while. And then I changed it up and I said, "Who are you and what do you want?" And I had no idea who this person is and was. And then she again asked, "Who am I?" I said, "Who are you and what do you want?" And she said, "I have a paper." And I said, "I don't want it. I don't know who you are, and I'm not going to open the door because I can't do that. If you refuse to identify yourself and refuse to tell me what you have in your hand, it's not going to stay on my house. It's not going to stay there. I'm sorry." And so I did remove it from my porch until such time as I could put on proper clothes and go out and see what it is. But it's not going to stay at my house. It's not going to come in my house until I know what it is. And then they came back again and came down, pounding in. And then there were two people at my door, and they were taping me, which if you're serving a warrant or serving illegal papers, you frankly can't do. But I had no idea what it was. And eventually
professor identified herself and said why she was there. And I said, oh, if you have something to deliver to me, meaning the president of the Board of Education, you need to do it through the proper way. I said, this is not the proper way. And I said, that needs to go to the board clerk. And again, and that's where we were, and they want to go back and forth. And I said, you know, we're done. I am not going to let this come in my house. I still don't know what it is. And I asked them to remove themselves from my porch. And again, this is back to much time that we spent on allegations regarding individual in the district that we investigated. Those allegations we found to be unfounded and without merit. That petition went to the Commissioner of Education for New York State. They did their investigation. The Commissioner of Education went at length down through every article of those allegations and said those allegations were unfounded and without merit. And we let it go at that. We have not mentioned this since it was dealing with, frankly, young children in this district. We did not need to talk about this anymore. So here we hear about it again. Gee, I wonder why. So I said, you know, my wife grew up in New York City, and we locked the door, and you don't let people, if you don't identify yourself, you're not coming in. And if you don't tell me what you have in your hand, it's not coming in my house. I've been married for 37 years plus. I do what she has trained me well. I'm just a farm kid from Enfield. My wife grew up in Manhattan. There's ways you do things. If you want to serve me papers, I'm glad to talk to anybody. Tell me who you are when you're at my door, pounding on the door in Saturday morning. I mean, let's consider proper protocols, proper actions with another. If you want to talk about how you treat another person, let's talk about that. What was the cause of you coming to my door Saturday morning? What were you trying to get? And you know, their petition went to the state of New York, went to the Commissioner of Education. They investigated for months and came up with their ruling in the end of June, which is the end of their business. And we let it go at that. And that was fine. There's nothing more we could do. So now we're talking about this again. And I'm glad to talk about it more, but I'm not going to. But just for the community, just when you knock on my door, just, you know, hopefully you can wear a mask if you want, but please tell me who you are and what your business is. If you refuse to do that, no, I'm not going to let you in. I never went on the porch. I never left my home. I never opened the door, but it's an outside screen door. You can see. There's video. Yeah, that's me. Am I yelling and screaming? No. I said, you can see my face. And when she finally tells me what's in this, who they are there on behalf of, and I said, you can see me say, oh, fine. After all that, after 3 times, after disturbing my home for a long time on a Saturday morning, you finally tell me what this is all about. And I said, this is not the proper way to do what you're trying to do. And I understand why they did what they did. And that was my Saturday morning on January 15th of 2020. And yeah, and I'm just me, and I certainly don't mean to intimidate anyone, but I suggest if you come to my house, just say hi and tell me who you are. I hope that is enough, and let's move on to student reps.
Hi, so IHS has definitely been enjoying the onset of warmer weather. Most spring sports are having their senior nights this week. I believe baseball is playing in there as we speak. AP exams have also been taking place over the last week. A lot of students are swamped with stress with those, but also really starting to see the home stretch of the school year. May is also Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. And IHS's own AAPI and Allies Club has been working on a mural for the last few months has begun actually painting it in the last few weeks, with students from all grades and identities contributing to it. I also hope that you got to read the May issue of the Tatler that came out last Friday, including the comprehensive review and guide to the IHS bathrooms that was in it. We'd also like to thank Dan Bryman and his team for coming to IHS and inspecting our facilities. Some students have already noticed little fixes. However, I was made aware that custodial staff felt that they were also being blamed for the state of disarray and dysfunction of our bathrooms. An assertion that I'd like to refute as there really is no way that an underpaid, overworked custodian can be responsible for there being a 50-50 chance that a urinal or toilet will flush or if the sinks will work properly. On that note, our custodial staff remains severely understaffed. I understand that there have been multiple positions that have remained empty for over a year or many, and that we have staff working the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs in our district out of desperation to both keep our schools clean and functioning and also just to keep food on the family's table. I hope that the district is doing everything that they can to both raise the salaries of custodial and other crucial employees such as nurses, cafeteria workers, guidance counselors, and paraprofessionals, as well as doing what we can to make IHS a more attractive place to work. Liz mentioned how we have so many vacancies and how teachers and other staff are leaving our district for even Lansing, other nearby places that currently pay significantly more than we do for starting positions. And I really hope that these goals are reflected in this year's budget, and if they're not, that they are very much prioritized next year's. Our schools are continuing to fall into poor maintenance and disarray, and it's crucial that we expand our staff and raise their pay substantially in order to improve the state of our schools.
It has recently come to our attention that students at Dewitt Middle School are experiencing transphobia and homophobia in their classrooms. Students have reported multiple incidents of slurs being written on classroom whiteboards and flat-out harassment in the hallways. Students have expressed that they feel unsafe in school, and as a result of these incidents. And another dimension of this issue is that the students we spoke to, when they communicated with teachers about the incidents, they said that very little was done and they did not feel heard, or that the teachers felt like they didn't feel like the teachers had the capacity to actually deal with those situations. One student even noted that teachers who witnessed these actions seemed like they didn't even care of what was happening. Given that something similar to this has happened at LICS this year, with transphobic slurs being written on bathroom stalls, we believe that in order to address these issues, additional trainings and professional development could be implemented for teachers to educate them on sexuality and gender and how to deal with situations of homophobia, transphobia, and intolerance. And specifically for middle schoolers, they're experiencing a time of change and discomfort, and this often comes with low self-esteem and bullying. It's crucial to support them through expanded social and emotional learning opportunities that can teach them about intolerance and establish a culture of love in our district.
Well, at LICS, today we began our a long-standing tradition at LICS. Today kicked off the first day of our 35th annual Middle East debate. So this is a debate that happens in connection with a class called Facing History. And essentially during the second half of the class, each student researches a certain leader in the Middle East. And then during the debates takes on the role of that leader and represents them and their nation and their beliefs in a debate setting. And the purpose of this is to, hopefully by studying extreme perspectives, the students can learn how to deal with extremism in their own lives. And I did it 2 years ago. I represented Hassan Rouhani, who was the then president of Iran. He is no longer. And it has been happening for 35 years. So it's a very fun tradition. A lot of students come and watch the debates, and it's always a very rewarding experience.
Yeah, we recently had an ASM. There was actually EASM that happened because there has been some recent information about Roe v. Wade being overturned in this country. And our community in the past, when a major decision like that has happened, our school is typically called a EASM or emergency all-school meeting to kind of come together as a community and be like, hey, how are we doing with this? Because that is something that will change a lot of people's lives and our own lives. And so that's a very common thing. The EASM form was petitioned out. It got around 35 staff signatures and around, I think, like 175 student signatures for it to happen on Wednesday. The conversation was sadly moved to Friday. The community did not agree with this opinion, and there was a separate conversation that was led by our kind of feminism group, our committee, had a separate conversation. If you feel like this is a necessary thing for you to talk about, happened in the Black Box Theater. And it was a very impactful conversation. Our lovely Kim actually attended it, while me and Andrew had to lead the other conversation that was happening in the gym, which was definitely a conversation to have. And I fully support what happened as my own personal feelings about what happened. I am glad that the community was able to process it together, because I think that is some of the beauty of LACS. Its size, it's how we run, is that we are able to talk about the things that happened in this country and kind of doing it together. Yeah. What kind of yeah.
Yeah.
Second Adams.
So I did attend this along with a great portion of our student body. And it just was an important conversation to be had, because the overturning of Roe v. Wade leads into like a lot of different like intersectionality things within all different types of communities, because it is a step backwards. And I just wanted to say that. But so we've had some bathroom like inequality, I guess, because teachers have been saying that they've been judging students based on their appearance and not on how they identify when going into the bathrooms. So we've had like a really like big discussion about this, and teachers are, I guess, not really like, they're like backlashing us, if you will, on how like students identify as like pronouns and whatever have you, with the bathrooms and like where they stand and which bathroom they choose to be. And we are excited about our transportation meeting.
Yeah.
And going off of Zakim's point, one thing that has been, so I've been at LA6, I'm a senior right now. I've been at LA6 since 6th grade. That is about 7 years that I've been at this school, which is probably longer than some of you who have even been on the board. And in my entire time at LACS, we have always, every single year, there has been a proposal, a push, an idea to make all of our bathrooms gender neutral. And this has always consistently been blocked for whatever reason, the most recent reason being that they did not meet state standards. And we have requested that we get assistance with helping these bathrooms meet state standards so they can be gender neutral bathrooms. Because honestly, we've got 5 bathrooms in the school right now. And like, I think what it is right now is that 3 of them are men's rooms, 1 is a women's room, and 1 is gender neutral.
Yes.
And so it's really not a great situation. So we are really hoping to make, we really always wanted to make all of the bathrooms in the school gender neutral, and we've been blocked. So I guess we are once again requesting the assistance, and as I understand it, that assistance is that every stall must be fully enclosed, and every urinal must be enclosed in some way with either a full like door or a kind of divider and a screen, which seems pretty straightforward. So that's the latest information that we've got on that. We are very excited, of course, with the capital campaign that we'll be renovating 2 of our bathrooms in the upstairs area, which is very good because those bathrooms have been disgusting and almost unusable for quite a long time.
7 days.
So
Sorry.
we're you know, bathroom troubles are shared between IHS and ICS. That's our big hot button issue today.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks,
That's all
everyone.
from us,
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Board responses.
I have a question, I apologize, I missed some of the other. Is there any chance of the Middle East debates being televised or virtual?
So that is a really good question. They are televised and virtual. They're not this year, and they have not been. The reasoning for this is because, as you might imagine, a debate involving all the leaders in the Middle East can get a bit contentious and
Great
not
point.
the most polite. There is, on a very serious note, there is a lot of, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, extreme nationalism, just basically straight up justification of terrorism at these debates, which is really not something that we want to be broadcasting out. It's an LACS tradition, and we always approach it with a lot of consideration and care, and especially, it's very established in our community that the students, when they say these things, they are not even remotely saying them as themselves. Students do not agree with the ideas they are promoting. It's very much an act. And that's something that is very important and a very, strong understanding at our school, which is valuable, and also we don't really want to be, that's why we don't broadcast them. So.
Excellent point, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd just like to make a couple points about, first of all, bathroom. I do not usually sit on facilities committees, so I will say that in 11 years on the board, this is the first time I've ever heard that LACS has for years been trying to make all their bathrooms gender neutral. Has this come to facilities?
I don't recall.
It has?
But
Okay.
my question, and not to interrupt you,
That's
is when he said it was blocked, I don't know about the block piece either, so I'm just.
Yeah, I just don't recall it having been set up. I'm going to say that, we're putting gender neutral bathrooms in elementary schools, middle schools. Not every single one, but there's no, and these were all proposals that have been brought to us by the students, and the administration is supporting that. As for the remarks on Dewitt Middle School, I've been spending some time at Dewitt lately, talking with the dean of students. I have friends and colleagues who are parents at Dewitt Middle School, and I am consistently getting a very different message than the one that you presented at the board. I've got parents who are talking about how incredibly supportive and inclusive teachers are, and how their kids feel really supported. We were at a community conversation at Dewitt a couple of months ago, where the question of gender neutral bathrooms came up, and there was a great deal of support. So I do think that sometimes when you hear students from another school complaining, you're only hearing one voice. And I'm just gonna add that I have heard a lot of statements that do not paint that picture, and no school is perfect. And of course, we want all the schools to be perfect, and that's what we aim for.
Rudy.
I'm thinking, this is amazing. Adam, I'll address your comments and say that I think by now you appreciate that this is a balancing act, very tricky. As I'm listening to you comment about the dilapidated state of the high school, our facilities falling into disrepair, money you want to see spent on professional development, I'm literally sitting here responding to a desperate email from a senior citizen in our community who's complaining that the tax burden that we're putting on them is unsustainable. Right? Even though we maintain the rate the same amount as it was last year, and it's actually gone down. The majority of the last 7 or 8 years, it's gone in the reverse direction. Right? So there are multiple perspectives about the money that can be spent from multiple parts of our community. Student voice is just one, it's a critical one, which is what we need you to be here to advocate. So I'm not telling you to ever stop. Just want to give you a different perspective. There are people out there in pain who are literally thinking about leaving this community, right? And we have to balance this, non-unpaid volunteers. And let me tell you what happens if we get the balance wrong, right? And the quality of your education and facilities continues to diminish. Then equity in people's homes, right, starts to go away, the home values decrease, and then people start moving to other parts of the community. I heard what you said about Lansing. We have 5,500 students. Lansing has a fraction of that. Lansing has much more property on the tax rolls than we do because of Cornell University's presence. Again, multiple factors that you are in a position to actually learn about, right? Because you sit here with us at this table. Given your trajectory, what you want to do next year in college, it might behoove you to actually have conversations with us about these critical functions and areas of finance before you come off sounding as if you aren't informed, right? You actually have access. Amanda will pick up the phone and respond to you. Right? Anybody on this board will indulge you in a conversation about these critical areas. And that does, again, let me be crystal clear. I don't want you to change your powerful voice. I don't want you to ever be intimidated by anybody sitting up here, because we serve you. It will just come off as more informed, and hopefully more nuanced and balanced. As to the LICS bathroom situation, I can tell you for years, since we sat here on this side of the table, other voices were in our ears telling us that only a certain number of students around the country were experiencing the need for gender neutral bathrooms, right? And I think there was one time where someone said the number of trans students, the number of sexual gender minority students was something like 6 in 1,000. Right? So doing the math here, that factored into a lot of the discussions about where we were. Where we are is in a different place politically, right? And the movement is beginning to move much more towards your side of the equation, saying that if we did all the bathrooms, we wouldn't have this issue. Best sign I've ever seen in a bathroom was up in College Town, in the new College Town Bagels. It says, do whatever, just wash your hands, right? I think that's a powerful statement. I think that's where we are hopefully moving towards, but again, we keep saying this, keep coming at us. Right? Your voices are being heard, and we are trying to do the best we can to balance a lot of complicated issues. And none of us pick up hammers and walk to the bathroom and fix anything. It's not how this thing is set up. So these processes take time. A lot of things you're talking about, again, if you would have the conversations with us, you'd understand our frustration. Many of these things have to go through the state. We have to go through the state education department to fix some of the things you're talking about. That's crazy and insane, but it's what must be done. We can't fix it because we have 5 bargaining units, right, that all need to be involved. And they have their own schedules because we're asking them to do multiple things. So these are not excuses, these are complexities. There's a reason you sit at this side of the table. I'm not saying you're on our side, but do some investigation. Do some conversations, reach out to us and be more informed so we can have an actual better conversation. I hope that makes sense and you're not taking this as some attack, and it's not how it's meant.
Sean, the issue of all gender bathrooms, I don't like the phrase gender neutral. It reminds me of being colorblind. We've been having this conversation, but there's no doubt this has been a conversation at facilities. We're aware and been trying to walk the line between making sure that we have accessible bathrooms that meet the needs and the measurements and requirements of the state, but I can greatly appreciate the frustration. It's a long time coming. We've been having this conversation for about 2 years. Real quick about pay of our employees. I believe we have signed a new contract, which has significant pay increases, upwards of 12% for our nurses. Recognizing that everyone needs to be paid more. Also aware that as we have these conversations, yes, there are 6% of our, possibly 6% of our staff may be leaving. And if you drive around town, you'll see almost every single business has a sign that says help wanted. Right? So we're in a tough position. Folks, restaurants can't open because they don't have enough folks to work. We talk about, places, right? Point being is employment is difficult in times of a pandemic, and it gets exacerbated when we find ourselves. Doesn't mean we can't do more, right? Doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing more. And I am disheartened to hear that our students are experiencing overt forms of homophobia and transphobia. There's no doubt that that is happening. I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that's happening. What we do as a district, what we do as a school, that is on us to create those loving environments. Yes, we are going to have additional training this summer. That has always been there. It also means how do we encourage more folks? It means additional budget because we should be paying folks to come be trained as well. So these are some of the complexities that are being talked about, right? That it's just not, here's the training, it's how can I pay you to make sure that you are trained as well? But yes, no form of xenophobia, homophobia, racism, sexism, patriarchy. If we're true to what our mission is, then we have to find ways to end it. And it does take all of us to make that happen. So I appreciate you sharing what you shared in the stories you told. I appreciate you sharing them with as well. And we'll continue to do the work on our side to negotiate those complexities, even while New York State tells us we can't do certain things. We'll continue to try to find ways to make that happen. One more.
Yes, thank you so much. I just a couple things regarding salaries and vacancies. So again, our salaries are collectively bargained. And as Shaman mentioned, the Employees Association contract was recently settled and it was ratified by an overwhelming majority of the membership. So they were happy with it. And it gave significant pay increases to both nurses and bus drivers. And custodians are in that bargaining unit as well. As far as, vacancies, at the last HR committee meeting, Ladera Sims, the Assistant Director of Human Resources, and who is also overseeing recruitment and retention efforts, she and Lily Telkai gave an outstanding detailed presentation of many, many ways in which this district is working to recruit a diverse staff and to retain them. And I was able to say, certainly when I came to the district in 1985, there was nothing like that. My support came from a couple of colleagues who were hired at the same time and we're all running to each other going, is this really happening? Like, what's going on? And I spent 25 years here and mentored and was colleagues with and friends with many, many folks. And the whole time I was here, there was nothing close to what is in place now to try to recruit and retain outstanding staff. And just one point of correction, I'm like 98% certain that the starting salary in Lansing is lower than ours. I believe our starting salary, which was negotiated 3 years ago, I believe, significantly increased starting salary. From district to district, there are discrepancies in pay at certain levels because of the way that different districts do their salary increases. So at a certain level, you might find somebody in Ithaca with a certain number of years and education who is at a lesser degree than somebody in a neighboring district. But as far as starting salaries, we're doing really well, and that's something that we have for a number of years set out to do. And then in terms of salary discrepancies, one of the things that's also true is at the higher end of the salary range, people with the most experience, Ithaca's salaries are very, very high, where in many other districts, there is a cap on salaries at the upper level. So people are moving up, and then toward the end of their career, they stall.
Thanks, Chris, go ahead.
I just to piggyback on what Maura was saying, and I think it's misleading to say, and I'm not trying, I can't tell them, but you know, teachers leaving or people leaving, and one, we have sought to aggressively recruit and keep teachers and, you know, grow our own teachers support groups and things like that, and making sure that when teachers are here and they come on board, and folks leave for many different reasons. So to say that it's for one specific reason is incredibly misleading, and it's unfortunate. And I've said this for at least the last 5 years. We were in televised meetings. If someone is saying that and preaching that without sharing all of the information and also the other side of it, if someone's watching that, that's concerning, because that's what they're hearing. Because we also know that we've got great supports, we've got smaller class sizes, we've got, you know, one-to-one aids, co-teaching models, and all these things that go into what makes Ithaca great. And I was actually talking to someone, what we do in Ithaca is extremely robust, and a lot of teachers are extremely prideful in what we have going on here, and they shout it out. No job is without its frustrations either. One of the things I'm still scratching my head at is how to keep and retain bus drivers, because I think as long as I've been on the board, we've tried to keep bus drivers. And if you drive up and down from one end of the state to the next, you're going to see somebody recruiting a bus driver. And it's just, that's one of the things that's just hard to do. But I say all that to say, I think we need, if we're going to have the conversation, we need to do the homework and say, okay, one, if folks are leaving, whatever that number is, why did they leave? But also, at no point in time are we not recruiting, are we not trying to retain one, good quality folks, and really make sure that they have everything they need to be successful within this district. Then that's really the conversation I think we should be having, and we can have. That's the other beauty, we can have that conversation.
One rebuttal.
Yeah, I just wanted to, I think I should probably clarify some of my statements. So, you know, I said I have a few responses. I feel like I was addressed a few times. But I would like to say about, you know, my being at OCS and us trying regularly to change our bathrooms. I mean, I am not entirely unsurprised that you haven't heard this, because since I've been at this school, the kind of excuse that we've gotten from many different people, from our own administration, from the district, from the state, from whoever, has been different every time. You know, when I first was here, the excuse was that we don't have the authority to do that. We don't, you know, as a student body, we don't, that's not something that we can control, it's not under our purview. Then it changed, just like, okay, we can do this, but we need the bathrooms to be up to a certain code. And oh, hey, look at this, we're gonna have this capital campaign, and they're gonna redo all the bathrooms. The capital campaign is gonna redo all of our bathrooms and make them all up to code for gender neutrality. And then it was, that was kind of pulled out from underneath us that, oh, you know, now they actually aren't going to redo every bathroom, they're just gonna redo the 2 on the upstairs level. And those ones are going to have the option to be, you know, gender neutral. And it has been a very kind of long and arduous process of different kind of, you know, we get a step forward and then we take 2 steps back. And it's very frustrating, especially when it's changing every time. So I hear your words, and I guess we can do more to bring this to your attention, so we will remember that, and that will be our policy in the future. Regarding gender neutral bathrooms, I hear what you're saying about all gender bathrooms. Knowing what I know from the students in my life who are transgender, who fall under any non-cisgender part of the gender umbrella, a lot of them have said that gender neutral is a preferred term because the opinion is that they would like a safe space to use the bathroom and know that they're going to be around people who understand their challenges and their difficulties. So if it's an all gender bathroom, you've got you've got cis people, you've got trans people in the same bathrooms. That means that there is no safe space. And it's kind of counterintuitive because it seems like you're making it all a safe space. But when there are people in the community who are not respecting you, inviting them into your bathroom, meaning that is not really something that I think there's going to be a lot of support for. And the other.
So Andrew, just real quick to that, I'd love to have this conversation. We're having it on Ithaca College campus as well with the non-cis folks in my life, and gender inclusivity is another way. There are various signs that we're having the debate around to make sure that it captures the reality and that folks do feel safe, affirmed, and seen.
Yeah.
So let's have this conversation at some point in time. I welcome it.
Absolutely, and I'm very certain that the situation on IC campus is very different from LACS. This is just what I've been hearing from LACS students. The other thing, sorry, not to cut you off, but I got one more. The other thing, what I've been hearing about Dewitt. I'm going to preface this. I'm not familiar with the Dewitt situation in any details or specifics, but I am familiar with the way that gender non-conforming students and non-heterosexual students can face discrimination. It can be very subtle and it can be very pervasive, and it can happen even in a community that prides itself on being the most LGBT inclusive school in the district, like LICS. It happened at our school at the beginning of this year, and so I want to I absolutely do hear that Dewitt is a great school and very inclusive. But I think, and I'm not suggesting that you're trying to dismiss these concerns at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I think that hearing that and saying, well, I also have heard that Dewitt is really good. But these two truths they can coexist. I mean, you can have classrooms, teachers, students who are great, friend groups who are all super inclusive, and then you can have people who are not. And that exists, and that's kind of a very apparent fact of life, especially for students who, even if it's just 3 people in the hallways that you pass in between your 3rd and your 4th period class, that once a day, every day, once a day you pass them and you feel that is a minuscule kind of part, but it weighs down on you and you can feel it. And it's very, speaking as a student who has got many LGBTQ plus friends, speaking as a student who is a member of that community, it is very, very challenging and difficult to open up about your experiences, especially when they relate to any kind of discrimination that you've faced. So I think that, students who are having a good time, students who are having an open experience, they are, quick to vocalize that, to express that, and that's a really great thing. I'm really glad for that. But students who are not are going to be, closed off. They're going to be afraid of talking about this, especially if they hear from everyone else that, oh, this is such a great school. And they're thinking, am I going crazy? Is this just happening to me? Am I alone? So I think that almost having a school that is, so prided, it says that it's really good about this, and then also having these reports makes it almost worse than a school that's just flat out bad on some level. It's slightly, it's more subtle, it's more insidious. That's my thoughts on the matter. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. So we are here to serve our school. We are student reps, right? We are supposed to be the student voice for student issues and to kind of have our conversations publicly. There is a reason why these conversations are public. So the public can hold you all accountable and also us accountable, right? The students need to be able to hear what we have to say. I find that there's been like a pattern recently of this dynamic where we do not feel welcome on this board, and specifically when we bring issues up to the board about like earlier today, like bathrooms, right? We know how taxes work. We know that we are so thankful that our community pays and like subsidizes for our education. We cannot be more thankful for that, but it just feels like this dynamic that has formed, or specifically one student representative continuously is being degraded for what they're trying to bring to the table. It just feels very unhealthy to me, and it feels like not productive to what we are here to do.
One more.
Well, this is a good connection to what I wanted to say. So, and I'm just speaking for myself. You know, what I've tried to do is when I've heard something that is either incorrect or, you know, lacks the depth of understanding, I feel like it's important to speak to that. And I know that that can sometimes sound dismissive, and I really don't mean to be dismissive. And that one of the reasons I sit here taking 6,000 notes is so that I have this to go and ask questions about what's been brought up. Because a lot of this stuff, you know, we have our perspective from the people we talk to in the community, we do visit schools, but, you know, we're in and out of multiple schools, and, you know, it's a part-time job, unpaid job. But, so, you know, we have limited perspective. So we hear what you're saying, and I know and I'm not all, you know, my fellow board members as well, you know, we follow up with people or paid professionals who have more information. And so we try to tell you what we do know, and then we try to follow up about what we don't know.
Thanks, Mark. And if nothing else, go ahead, Al.
Yeah, I'd like to emphasize that, you know, in terms of seeing the people who are getting input and then moving it along to people who know the things that need to be known and who are in positions to enact it, to make decisions and changes, that is our job. It is our job to represent the student body and their interests. And so then we take all of the input that we gain from talking to our students, our teachers, our staff, all day long, every day. And we bring it here. We bring it to you as the Board of Education of ICSD to then take that input and inject it into your decision making. You are the public representatives, and you get the input not only from us, but from the staff that we don't see, from the rest of the community, from all of the constituents of this district. And then it is your job to put that all together and do, you know, the delicate balancing act that we are all aware of, we all recognize. And so, you know, we bring to the table a lot of what we feel as students and what we see around us in the student body. Sometimes there are misconceptions, sometimes there are things that we can't see clearly, sometimes there are things we're unaware of, and we appreciate when these things are clarified upon. However, those things should not be used as pushback against our points. These things should not be used as reasons as to why we should not, or we are, you know, doing things incorrectly. So, as Eitan said, there is a reason these conversations are public, so we can bring out what we see as students, what we see in our peers, and for the board to respond to that adequately in order to, you know, have this conversation and clear things up so that the board and the administration of the district can then go on into their decision-making processes. It's not our job to do our homework other than our schoolwork for the people we don't represent, although we do try.
Okay, respond to that. Hold on, we'll respond to that. Because I feel that
Chris, do
some
you
of
wanna
the, some of the.
speak first, or? Go ahead.
Let me, there are times when you just let it sit and reflect on what was just said.
Right.
It was eloquently stated. Let's take it in.
Beautifully stated.
I just, one clarifying thing, I actually think this is very timely, I think it's beautiful. I just don't want you to misconstrue clarifying or explaining, and there will be pushback.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's healthy, and I think that it helps because, you know, and I think one thing that concerns me with hearing what you said is, I've also heard, no, keep coming at us, we need to hear this. So I guess, but it is a balancing act. And it is a learning process. When you bring things forward, and you're right, it is public, and when you bring things forward to the public and it may not be 100% accurate or a nuanced thing, it's our responsibility to clarify it where we can. You know, because one of my biggest concerns is once it's out there, and it's harder to get it back on those things. But just because we clarify or even push back a little bit, that's not an attack.
I did just state that I.
No, I'm saying that for my own edification. I'm not saying that. So, but, and I'm actually speaking to what he said as far as I hope we agree on that and we see that, because I think also this is robust and it's healthy for us.
So, and we really need to move on. We have great conversations with the community, with you all, with other students, and as a board member, whether you're new or been on for a while, you learn pretty quickly that you take it all in, and the solution isn't always available next week. And sometimes it takes years to get where we want to be. But we can't let that stop us from fixing everything. And so but it's part of that process. And that process, we take it all in, and then we go into our work sessions and we hash it out for a bit. And we ask, what can we do? How do we get to, we talked about earlier today, how do we get to yes? We're a board for more than a decade now. We've been trying to get to yes, not to say no. And that's our job, is to how do we get to yes? And it's a long process to get to yes sometimes. But we really we appreciate the discussion, but we do have some work to do. And consent agenda is short because we had a really long one last time.
I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
So my Chris, we have to, is there any, yes, we'll call the roll, please. If there's any questions regarding the consent, please do. But Trish is going to call the roll.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croyer,
Yes.
Sean Everson Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Yes.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Patricia Rosen.
Yes.
Thanks, everyone. Dr. Brown.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Your opportunity, Dr. Brown.
And I will be brief because I'm looking at some Northeast folks that I can't wait to get up here to share. So pardon me for being fast and brief, but I just want to make sure I announce and recognize the hundreds of folks who came out for the commendation ceremony today, students, staff members, community members, parents, in the heat. Can you believe I said that? And thank you for putting up with the heat for 25 minutes while we recognize that many folks. It was an amazing experience. Also, I don't think I've heard the high school folks mention this today, but the unified basketball games tomorrow at 4:30?
Yeah.
It got moved. Maybe you did. All right, I want to reiterate it again.
Got moved from yesterday to tomorrow.
Yeah, it got moved. And that's the place to be tomorrow afternoon at 4:30. I'm
Definitely.
seeing some outstanding stuff. The budget vote frequently asked questions section on our website is up and running. I will just ask community members to go check that out as you're thinking about and learning more about our budget, our proposed budget that is going to be voted on next Tuesday. And then finally, just gotta give another shout out to Jason Trumbull. It's rare that we have one of our secondary principals being recognized by the state association, the entire state association, as secondary principal of the year. So when you see Jason Trumbull, that brother's been here as long as anybody else in this organization, and at the high school too. Just say thank you and congratulations on a pretty special record.
To that point, Dr. Brown, there was a time when it was thought that at the high school, really, it was just too big a job for one person, or it really, how do we solve the principal position at the high school? Mr. Trumbull, so we talked about that. We just had to find the right person.
And now
And
the stage-
he was here already. Still appreciate that.
Thank you for the opportunity.
More, Dr. Brown, go ahead.
No, yeah, can I?
Yeah, transitioning.
Yeah, please, come on up, y'all. I mean, look, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
That's okay. Hello, and good, you have my slides. I'm gonna take my mask down just because I feel like I connect with people a little bit better that way. So board, it's a pleasure to have the opportunity to address you today. My name is Katie O'Connor. I'm a K-5 general music teacher at Northeast. I'm here to talk to you today a little bit about the hip hop project that we did in 5th grade at Northeast. And I need to just kind of end, yes, that Eldred was able to observe me presenting about this work at our superintendent's conference day, where I was able to share it with my colleagues in the fine arts department. So I just want to kind of open this presentation by acknowledging that I'm not an expert in hip hop, but I come to this work with a lot of respect. And this unit is a first draft unit. This is my first year teaching this. So what you are seeing here represents my growth edge as a music educator and a veteran music educator at that, when I was undergoing my teacher training many years ago, that we were not really talking about this in the music education space the way that we are now. And I am glad that we are doing it because I feel that all students deserve the opportunity to see their culture held up, elevated, examined, celebrated in the music education space. So with that, if we can advance the next slide, please. I want to be very clear that we are addressing New York State music standards here, that explicitly we are talking about creating standard number 1, 2, and 3 that center around conceiving and developing new artistic ideas and work. Next slide, please. Also, this unit was designed with Goldie Mohammed's 5 pursuits in mind. In our building at Northeast, we have kind of had these as a building focus this year. Every staff meeting we have had, it's kind of opened with a focus on the 5 pursuits. Also, explicitly in the fine arts department, we have been talking about what the 5 pursuits look like in a fine arts space. So next to each of these terms, identity, skills, intellect, criticality, and joy, you are seeing the questions that we are considering in this unit that we're asking students to ponder as we move through this unit. Next slide, please. We begin the unit with a framing asking what is hip hop? And again, because of my own identity, I felt it most important to center the voices of current practitioners of this art. So this is a short video produced by the Smithsonian Institution, which I will not play for the sake of time, but I invite you to listen to at your leisure. DJ Ice Cold is a 2nd generation Indian American who talks in the video about her experience encountering this music and coming to it with a rich understanding of how she enters the space as a human and as a child of immigrants, and how America itself is a remix culture that we are constantly evolving and developing. And that, to me, at a school that is incredibly diverse, where we have 38 languages represented, feels really important to me to acknowledge that this is in some ways the perfect music vehicle to explore identity in a space. If you can advance the slide, please, but don't let the video play, so go ahead, you might need to click again. Yeah. Thank you. Our kind of second kind of big picture thing was looking at the history of hip hop through the anchored in the text When the Beat Was Born, which our 5th graders, we treated as a read aloud and kind of explore the historical roots of hip hop, specifically DJ Kool Herc and Afrika Bambaataa, who, as I learned from talking to Eldred, were personal acquaintances of his, which was very exciting for me to hear. We really wanted students to connect with the organic origins of this, where it came from,
Also that it was here in New York State and only about 50 years ago. And my understanding is that really it's about 49 years ago, the party that kind of started it all. And so again, this is a very recent part of history, but one that continues to evolve rapidly. And if you turn on the music on the radio today, many of our students are accessing this music, and it's important to see it reflected in the curriculum. Again, advanced 2 slides. We don't have to watch the read aloud, but again, it's there for your reference if you would like it. Next, we explored the 5 pillars of hip hop. These are pedagogical constructs, and there is a clickable link there for you to explore, again, at your leisure. DJing, of course, that refers to the beat making aspect or the musical underpinnings of hip hop. MCing or mic controlling, talking about lyrical creation, so bringing in ELA content, other skills, so really making this cross-curricular work in many ways. Breakdancing and graffiti are 2 elements that I was not able to incorporate this year, but I'm hoping in future iterations of the unit that we can cooperate with PE and art teachers in the building to really make this a more cohesive and immersive unit. And I'm hoping we can bring some additional experts to bear on that. So looking at you, Eldred. The last pillar, this was new to me, is also considered knowledge or self-knowledge, or again, how identity enters this artistic space. And we dabble in that a little bit as well. Next slide, please. So the project as construed dealt with the following prompt, that we were working explicitly on those DJ and MC skills, asking students to write a 4-line lyric based on their name, their interest, and then record that lyric to an original backing track in the music software Soundtrap. Next slide, please. So here's the prompt. This was the model that students were given to kind of base their projects off of. My name is blank, and I like to blank, or I like blank. The second line was theirs to create, asking them to rhyme the last word of the second line with the last word of the first. I like that. Oh yeah, I like that. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is show you 3 examples of student work. We asked all students to do all steps of the process. Some completed all with ease, some struggled at every step. What we were most interested in is that students were showing up as themselves in the musical space, so that they could really feel free to be all of who they are, celebrate who they are. And while you will see there's certainly room for improvement as far as maybe grammatical things, that really wasn't the explicit focus of this, because my time with them is so limited that I really wanted to encounter the musical aspects. If you could please click the sound icon there, we should be able to hear this. So again, so Edith really came to this with a lot of joy. You can see here she completely expanded on the model that was given. I feel like this is a tremendous expression of joy. You can hear her referencing rapping with her dad, and that this is a meaningful activity for her at home. So I thought this was a great example of what, when students are kind of left to expand on the model, what they would do. Next slide, please. This is from our student Abdesamad. Let's just open by hearing his work, please.
My name is Abdesamad. I love to dance, to kids pop. I friends. I like that. Yeah, I like that.
And you can go ahead and press stop if you don't mind. There's a little bit of extra track at the end. Oops. Yeah, if you want to reverse the slide so we can look at the lyrics for a minute. Thank you. So Abdesamad, as you can hear, the cadence of his speech is somewhat different. Abdesamad is one of our special needs students at Northeast, and I share his example to let you know that this work is accessible to students of all needs and identities. One particular thing that I want to point out, if you may have heard somebody say the word go at the very opening of the recording, 2 other students asked if they could support Abdesamad in recording his project because the recording step was complicated for many students. It emerged through the work that some students became tech mentors to the other. And once I kind of released control and realized that students had that expertise, it freed me up to move around the room in a different way. These 2 students worked really well with Abdesamad. He readily accepted their help, and they really encouraged him in a way that was beautiful and let his work emerge in a way that I think is quite powerful. Next slide, please. Let's listen to Isabella's, if we can.
Meu nome é Isabela e eu gosto de rimar. Pra mim isso é moleza porque eu gosto de criar. I like that. Oh yeah, I like that.
And again, you can stop that just about here for the sake of time. You can advance the slide and then bounce us back if you'd like. So Isabella's primary language is Portuguese. She is one of our ENL students, and at the outset of the project, again, she came to me and asked a question: may I write the first 2 lines of the rap in Portuguese, which is because I can readily think of many rhymes that work with my name. And again, I want her to feel successful. I want her to feel confident. And so letting her use her primary language was great. In case you're wondering what the translation means, my name is Isabella and I like to rhyme. For me, it is easy because I like to create. And I just thought, what a fitting lyric, and so confidently delivered. So as you can see, this is really rich work. I was tremendously encouraged by the student ownership that I saw, by the way they developed their ideas. Creation is a messy process, and this is not perfect. Of course, you can hear voices bleeding through, but I do think it's really real. And I think that we are looking at a student showing up in a way that allows them to connect to what they are learning. And if we can create more of those connections for them, I feel like that has tremendous implications for how students move through the arts their entire K-12 experience. Because if we can light their lamps young and make them feel like there is a place for everyone here, it is going to dramatically enrich the arts program as it develops all the way through. I've been a music educator at high school level. I've taught at the collegiate level. I came back to K-5 specifically because I felt like I had work to do here at the beginning to help catch students and meet them where they are. One more slide here, and I'll keep this quite brief. I will say as well, during the course of this, some students were far more comfortable than others. Remember that this is incorporating many different skills. We're talking tech skills, we're talking ELA skills, we're talking performance skills. So not all students feel equally competent in all areas. So we gave them choices about how they wanted to represent their work. Some, everybody was expected to self-reflect, but when it came time for Northeast Museum Walk, we gave them choices and said, what would you like to share with the community? So some offered their self-reflections about what they learned during the process. Some shared lyrics only, some shared entire performances. But again, that was done with a sense of safety and creating an environment in which they felt they could thrive and show the best parts of what they did. So with that, I'm happy to conclude, answer any questions that you have.
I don't have any questions. I'm just really impressed.
Thank you.
Yeah, very impressed.
I wish elementary music would have been cool like that when I was in elementary
Oh my
school.
God. I'm remembering my elementary school music teacher. She was nothing like you.
Just looking forward to seeing down and that gentleman down there as a former professor in hip hop, Sean Bradwell. So you've come to the right place. We can't. I'm chomping at the bit to help you.
Yeah, I would really, really welcome, ways to kind of make this even more meaningful, deeper, richer. The great thing is our upcoming 4th graders already have some familiarity with the software piece of this. So they're going to be far more adept, and I feel like we can dive in deeper on, I'd like to really work on their competency on the performance end of that, because I felt like perhaps that was under addressed this year, but it's our growth edge for next year.
So the students are phenomenal. What I'm equally and or more impressed by is the self-reflective approach as an educator. You know, that we don't always know things, and how do we sort of put ourselves in a space that may be unfamiliar. And so I'm going to take some lessons away from that as well. So I really thank you for being a critical, thoughtful, reflective educator, working in a space that may not always feel comfortable, but the results are phenomenal.
I have to really give a huge shout out to, you know, again, our building leadership, our equity team, who, you know, I consulted with many of the members as I was kind of conceiving this. Also to Daphne Shalulu, who has been really, really diligent in helping the entire department reconceive curriculum. I was able to take the anti-racist curriculum writing professional development last year and found that incredibly helpful. So I do want you to know that that professional development is bearing fruit. And you know, it's a skill that has to be practiced to be absorbed. So, you know, as we strengthen the muscle, I think we'll continue to get better at it. But we're trying, you know, we really are trying.
I just love the way you weaved a lot of that into this process for the children. And the peers being tech support. My only struggle was that when you shared the age of it and said, you know, it's 49 years old, and it's like, yes, it is, because I remember it. So, it's just reality.
It's hard to date oneself, I know.
No, you're not that old, Chris. But,
Okay.
old enough.
On that.
Oh, please, yeah.
Yeah, just what I typically don't say much, but I have to say, thank you. You're a gift to our community. What you just shared was one of the best artifacts of culturally and linguistically responsiveness I've ever seen. And I, you know, I have to say it's symbolic too, because we hear a lot about recruitment and retention efforts. I know how you got here, and the recruitment efforts that went into that, what attracted you to us, and how we're attempting to retain and professional development. So as folks are going to vote on a budget next week, you are symbolic of what we're attempting to do here. And please know you're a gift, because had you been a music teacher in Central Virginia back in the 80s, you would have saved some lives that should be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I gotta get up early, y'all.
Thanks.
Well, I don't know, speaking of safety, how about the safety plan? Should we, second reading and adoption tonight?
Okay, thanks everybody.
And I know it was reviewed in policy because I observed for a bit, I think. And Sean, anything?
I'll leave it to Dan. There's not much to add, but go ahead, Dan.
Well, I mean, I can go through quickly some of the updates if you want. I know we've done that a few times before. Yeah, but Tricia, I sent you some slides if you want to put them up, but that's okay. So, you know, first and foremost, it's grounded in the culture of love. You know, when we were building the district safety plan during, you know, we were experiencing a global pandemic, and we didn't want to recreate oppressive systems, and we saw it as an opportunity to create a plan that was anti-racist, anti-oppressive, and to evaluate some of our best practices. That's okay, don't worry about it. I'll just go through. So some of the things we learned during COVID was evacuation and lockdowns. We learned that, you know, we don't want to have classes next to each other. We want to have them separately. We know how students feel sometimes when they're experiencing a lockdown drill, and we took it as an opportunity to, we don't have to practice it. We can talk it out to the students. Throughout many of our policy meetings, we talked about communication with families. So families could have some advance notice for drills that were occurring, lockdown drills, shelter in place, and really all drills. We spent a lot of time talking about when we contact law enforcement, and that we started to create a protocol where if they could contact the building principals and administrators should contact the superintendent and or the deputy superintendent to check in. But of course, if it's imminent danger, to call 911. But also during that situation, if it's not imminent danger, to make sure that we reach out to parents and guardians, that we provide mental health supports, and other supports needed. In this document, we've added a lot of resources that include talking to children about violence, tips for parents and teachers. We've included safety drills and exercises for students with autism spectrum disorders and students with disabilities. And we also created a protocol that the state asked us to create. Basically, if we had to respond to a communicable disease. So we made a lot of these changes. We also learned from a lot of events that happened in the community and adjusted our emergency responses. And in some of the previous meetings, I talked about when we go into shelter in place, when we go lockdown. And I know our buildings have done a lot of work around that. That's really a very short version of some of the updates we did. And that's it for me. I know I've talked
Dan, it's,
a lot about this,
short-
many meetings.
No, a short version of updates, but many hours.
Yeah.
To
Sure, thank you.
many hours.
Many hours.
And you've got the whole policy committee right here, so.
Yeah.
The only thing I'll add to what Dan has shared,
Yeah.
and it was stated earlier about a process, right? That the safety plan has to be reviewed every year. And each year, we continue to learn and build and find ways to be more inclusive, realizing the ways in which our safety plan has been exclusive and continues to be exclusive. Please don't mistake what I'm saying to our community. But we will continue to hone it. We will continue to change it. We'll continue to learn. So I'm very appreciative, Dan, of your ability to be flexible and listen to the feedback and try to incorporate it into this latest version of the plan, which is vastly different than the version was 5 or 6 years ago. And hopefully the one in 5 or 6 years will be also vastly different than where we find ourselves now as well. So
As memory serves, what we have is, it was lacking.
and it was very much lacking.
In many areas, and frankly, in all aspects. And so I appreciate the work. Anything else? Can we?
I move the safety plan for second reading and adoption this evening.
Second.
Second by Pat.
Very.
Any other questions? Thirds?
I'm very excited.
Dan, you
Thank
don't
you,
get to vote on
everyone.
it.
I'll
we
be
have to
talking
go
about
back
different
to it.
things, and I'll be talking about different things in the future now.
Elder, before you leave,
Yes.
we are gonna vote, so if you
I'm
wanna.
standing right here, I'm not leaving.
Elder has not left the room. Don't leave the room. Tricia, please.
Rob Ainsley,
Yes.
Erin Croy,
Yes.
Sean Eversley Bradwell,
Yes.
Eldred Harris,
Indeed.
Moira Lang,
Yes.
Chris Malcolm,
Yes.
Patricia Wasley.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks once
Now
more.
you can cheer, Dan.
I'm very excited.
What did you do with your
Moving
time,
on.
Danny?
Um,
Oh, there's code
There's
of conduct.
there's plenty of things that I can
There's
talk
bathroom.
about. I'm very excited about the code of conduct.
And transportation.
Yeah.
Right, that's separate.
Thanks.
We do have our addition to the agenda, which is changes to the open meetings law, not our changes, but from the state of New York. And Sean, do you want to talk to them?
Yeah, I don't know if folks had a chance to take a look at the document that is shared as well with changes to the open meeting law. There are some decisions that will have to be made by each individual school board. If you're not one of the big five, anyway, in terms of what is expected and how we proceed. Again, the document is there and we
Where
are,
is it?
it is on tonight's agenda
Oh.
and it is connected to item 10.3.
Yeah, if you could.
It is a one-page statement that will allow board members to attend by video conference if all additional criteria is met. And that includes having a quorum in person. That will be a requirement coming up as of June 8th, so we're coming up soon. The public is able to attend the meeting at the physical locations we have here. We will have to adopt a resolution that allows aspects of virtual meetings. We will have to adopt and post the rules for participation, both in person and public. There is still some legal debate about whether or not the person who is virtual will have to identify the address from which they will be virtual at. That has historically been what's been required, and to allow the public to also attend the virtual location. That's what historically has been required as well. We're still making sure that we get clarification on that. I'm hoping that will change. We will have to participate in real time. And one of the biggest issues or changes of a virtual participation is that the camera will have to be on at all times. So there's a couple things that we have to consider as a board about how to proceed. Boards are not required to have hybrid meetings. The new law provides it as an option, and thus the need for a resolution, which we are about 3 weeks away from having to adopt before this new law goes into effect. If it's helpful for us to have our legal team here to answer questions on the 24th of our next board meeting, we can do that with resolution language ready to go, but to answer additional questions, that's something that we can also consider. It is not a policy, I want to be clear about this, it would be a resolution, but it would be the ways in which the board operates moving forward.
Sean, do you have any notion about the public may participate and provide comment virtually in real time, whether that squares with our policy of having public comment at the beginning of the meeting?
Yes, the idea would be that it would be public comment in real time. That's the idea.
But we could have it designated. Our policy could still be.
It could be an agenda item.
Right.
Yes. As it is now.
And Sean, could you clarify, you mentioned that there is a question as to whether, like, when a board member is participating virtually, whether they have to give the location that they're at? And did you also say that people would have to be, like, the public would be able to participate from that location?
That is the current law that states pre-COVID, things continue to change, guidance continues to change, but yes, prior to the opportunity of virtual meetings, a school board member could attend from another location, but that location would have to be published and available to the public.
So if I were running a low-grade fever and stayed at home so as not to endanger the lives of others or the health of others, I would have to allow people into my home?
If you wanted to attend virtually, and we would have to make that known at least 24 hours in advance along with our agenda, or you would stay home and not attend the meeting.
As I would do if we were only meeting in person.
Right.
As we did in the past when folks were under the weather or could not otherwise.
I'm gonna say that.
And I will say there's significant lobbying to expand the idea of hybrid or virtual video conferencing. So it's possible that prior to June 8th, we'll get a different set of recommendations or advice from the state as well, as has happened multiple times throughout COVID.
Yes. I
They
mean,
they don't always think it all the way through.
well, to me, that would be the critical issue right there. You know, what are the rules around attending virtually?
Yeah, right, and Sean, I won't, did they touch on, you could attend virtually, but would have to be within the district? Or
No, you can be anywhere. You can be anywhere in the world.
But then how does that square with, well, with the other part of it?
The other part is you just have to make it available, you have to post it, doesn't mean people will join.
I don't have to pay for their airfare?
No,
But, I mean, I'm a little bit, you know, there's this vague language about significant reading, including but not limited to, and,
This is Albany at work.
Right.
Alright,
Yeah.
so this is Albany.
Right, so we wanted to bring it up to make sure that folks, it was on people's radar, to be able to do some research and look at the recommendation. We did receive a notice from our legal counsel that was far more verbose than what we see here. This is the bulleted version that you see here. So I would recommend reading both of those.
And where would we find that?
We received a message from BS and K, and I will forward it back around to all board members to make sure that they have. And I can also send you the actual statement that came out from New York State as well.
And to be clear, this is in effect now. We are being given a
Extension.
well, I mean, right, it's been an extension until
June 8th.
Until June 8th, it was at least a month or maybe 2 months.
Yep.
Like 60 days, they gave us 60 days to comply. But it is the
It
rule
is,
now.
And this is not school boards, this is common
Anyone.
city council, Tompkins
okay.
County Legislature, right? This is any
Public meeting.
government, right, that is, any agency that is open to open meetings law.
Right, this is the open meetings law.
Alright.
We haven't discussed where we will be with our work sessions. Committees, we've been remaining virtual for committees, but for a work session where we typically would invite many to come in person, and you could have more than 4 board members attend at once, but that's a quorum. So does that, if you're gonna have more than 4, would that have to be in person? And, there's a few questions like that. Or should we're going to have, the board will have to have a conversation about what will work sessions look like.
So for example, the last HR meeting, if I'm not mistaken, there were 5 board members present in a virtual realm. That would not be able to happen under this guidance.
Right.
We'd have to be in person, it'd have to be notified in advance. If we have 3 board members that are in a committee meeting, there is a
Which is
chance that it
typical.
could still be virtual or experimenting, right? But, and that's partly why we went that route. But if there's gonna be more, there's gonna be a quorum present, it has to be in person.
Right.
And notified 24 hour, at least 24 hours in advance.
Back before we switch to the work session format, during a committee meeting, if another board member showed up, that was on the committee or was late or whatever, another board member would have to leave the room. Which that didn't lend itself to, frankly, board members learning more about what was going on in the other committees and offering their inputs, and it's an open dialogue, and that's, as we say, that's the best place to have our conversations about, frankly, bathrooms and curriculum and policy and all the rest. So
So we will have I'm gonna tell you already, it's gonna be a busy 24th, our meeting on the 24th. This can be on there, I'll take a look at the date, I don't think we would have much more time. We may have another meeting before then, I don't know what our first meeting in June is, maybe it's June 6th, I don't know. With that being said, I would humbly ask.
Our first meeting the first week in June, we have policy and HR. So
Then
we
this
need-
is something that we're gonna have to address on the 24th. So I would ask folks to be informed, if you have questions, send them immediately, we can start trying to get some answers and put some things together for folks that may address the questions that we have. And we can revisit those questions at our next public meeting, so folks know some of the dialogue that has been had.
And if we pass a resolution to allow virtual participation, would anybody who's attending virtually have to make the reason public?
I do not believe so.
and just and we'll talk about it more. But check it out, investigate it, and we'll talk more. Just some upcoming dates of importance. Just so folks know, community knows, we will not be meeting next Tuesday. That is election day. And so that is budget obviously the budget referendums, and then the board votes, and that is next Tuesday. We do have to meet on Wednesday to verify the election results. We typically do that in the evening. You can do frankly about any time, but we do that in the evening. And next Tuesday is facilities, and we really need to have a facilities work session next week because of everything going on. So facilities will meet at 5 o'clock next Wednesday. That's the normal meeting time. And then we'll have a special voting meeting after facilities to have a quorum. And I think we're trying to figure out whether we're going to be totally virtual or we're totally virtual for that, we're gonna be totally virtual for that, for facilities and also the special voting meeting. And this may indeed be the last time, since we are in this 60-day window, that we can have a vote to verify election results totally virtually. And in the future, it will be in person.
And a curriculum work session, their regular meeting would be on Tuesday, May 24th, but that's going to be canceled.
I think postponed.
Postponed.
Reschedule.
Rescheduled.
We don't cancel anything.
Can I
Always, go ahead, Eve.
Can I just say, we didn't have a chance to really comment at Catherine's presentation, but can I just say that this is the work we've been striving at curriculum, working with our administrators for God knows how long, right? This is cultural responsiveness. This is complete engagement. This is joy. This is it. And not just, this particular subject, but the extent that we can continue this work to expand those opportunities for our kids, keep them attached to learning. As you heard her say, everything she's doing in that presentation is aligned with the standards of the state. So I think we should take a small, tiny little tip of the hat to ourselves and our administrators and say yay. We don't often get a chance to say yay out loud around this table.
Say yay, Albert. Say yay. All right, so we, Dr. Brown, anything else? Great afternoon in the sun today. We always like to be able to start our meetings that way. It just slow us down a little bit, but it's okay, it's not that late. And I think we're done, right?
Yay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could I just wish my husband happy birthday?
Pat, I think you just did.
Oh.